Most people believe that history is made by dramatic battles, famous leaders, and unforgettable speeches. But sometimes, the most powerful changes in the world happen slowly, quietly, and in places so ordinary that no one notices them at the time. This is the real story of a government program that lasted for decades, involved thousands of Americans, and yet remained almost invisible to the public. It was not about war, not about bombs, and not even about victory. It was about watching, recording, and understanding human behavior in a way that would shape modern society. In the years after World War II, the United States entered a new kind of conflict. It was not fought with tanks or airplanes. It was fought with ideas, intelligence, and influence. This period became known as the Cold War. The American government feared that its greatest enemy, the Soviet Union, might win not only through military power, but through psychology, propaganda, and control over human thinking. Leaders in Washington began to ask a strange question. What if the real battlefield was the human mind? At the same time, American society was changing rapidly. Cities were growing, suburbs were expanding, and new technologies like television were entering everyday homes. People's habits, routines, and opinions were becoming more important to government planners, businesses, and researchers. Understanding how people made decisions became a national priority. In the late 1940s and early 1950s, several universities and research institutions began working closely with federal agencies. One of the most influential was Rand Corporation. Their researchers studied everything from nuclear strategy to consumer behavior. They believed that by analyzing data and patterns, it was possible to predict how large populations might react in times of crisis. Around this time, another powerful organization expanded its reach. The Central Intelligence Agency was created in 1947. While most Americans believed its main job was spying overseas, the reality was more complex. Some of its early programs focused on understanding psychology, persuasion, and social behavior. One of the lesser-known initiatives involved monitoring communities over long periods. The idea was simple but unusual. Instead of studying individuals in laboratories, researchers would observe real people in real environments. They would collect information about daily routines, communication, relationships, and reactions to events. This was not done openly. The fear was that if people knew they were being studied, their behavior would change. So the government funded projects quietly, often through universities, foundations, or public health programs. Researchers moved into communities, built relationships, and collected data for years. One such long-term research effort began in a small American town in the 1950s. The town was chosen because it appeared typical. It had middle-class families, schools, churches, and local businesses. Nothing about it stood out. That was exactly the point. At first, the program seemed harmless. Researchers asked questions about health, education, and family life. They studied how information spread through social networks. They wanted to know how rumors moved, how trust formed, and how opinions changed. But over time, the scope expanded. Researchers tracked who talked to whom. They mapped friendships. They analyzed how communities responded to stress, economic change, and social conflict. They looked at voting patterns, consumer behavior, and even emotional responses to national events. For the residents, life felt ordinary. They went to work, raised children, and watched television. Some participated in surveys, others did not. Most had no idea that their town had become a long-term social laboratory. The Cold War created urgency. American planners worried about how the population might react to nuclear threats. Would people panic? Would they trust government messages? Would they cooperate during emergencies? Studies like this helped shape communication strategies, emergency planning, and even advertising. One surprising discovery was how predictable many human behaviors were. Researchers found patterns in how people responded to fear, uncertainty, and change. These findings influenced not only national security, but also marketing, public relations, and media. Over the decades, similar research expanded. Programs studied urban neighborhoods, rural communities, and workplace environments. Data collection became more sophisticated. Computers allowed large-scale analysis. By the 1970s and 1980s, these approaches began shaping modern technology and business. Companies used behavioral insights to design products, services, and advertising. Governments used them for policy and public messaging. However, ethical questions also emerged. Many people began asking whether it was right to study communities without full transparency. Some investigations revealed that individuals had been monitored for years without informed consent. Debates about privacy, trust, and government power grew stronger. During the 1990s and early 2000s, the rise of the internet changed everything again. Suddenly, behavior could be tracked on a global scale. What once required decades of field research could now be observed in real time. Ironically, many Americans willingly share information online, often without realizing how valuable their data had become. Historians today look back at these early Cold War programs as the foundation of modern data science, behavioral economics, and social analytics. What began as secret psychological research eventually influenced technology companies, social media platforms, and digital marketing.
The most astonishing part of this story is not secrecy or power. It is how ordinary people, living ordinary lives, became part of a long-term transformation in how society understands itself. No battles were fought, no monuments were built, no dramatic moments made headlines. Instead, history unfolded slowly through surveys, conversations, and quiet observation. Today, when people discuss algorithms, artificial intelligence, and data privacy, they are often continuing debates that began decades earlier. The Cold War may have ended, but the idea that human behavior can be measured, predicted, and influenced remains central to modern life. And the truth is, this story is still unfolding. Because even now, every time someone uses a smartphone, watches a video, or interacts online, data is being collected, patterns are being studied, predictions are being made. The quiet, boring, and almost invisible history of behavioral research has shaped the world more deeply than many wars. It reminds us that the future is not always created in dramatic moments. Sometimes it is built slowly, by researchers, analysts, and ordinary citizens who never realize they are part of something much larger. And perhaps the most surprising realization is this: the experiment never truly ended, it simply evolved. So the next time you go about your normal daily routine, consider the possibility that the most ordinary moments of your life may be contributing to the next chapter of history. Because sometimes the greatest stories are not about what we see, but about what we never notice at all.